All right, welcome everyone. So tonight, the verses recited in the Taraweeh prayers, they tell a really powerful story. And it's not just history, you know? It's more like a divine commentary on how a community gets built through conflict, how loyalty is really put to the test, and what it truly means to persevere when the odds are stacked against you. Okay, let's dive right in.
So the whole narrative for the seventh night is really built on two essential chapters from the Quran, Al-Anfal and At-Tawbah. You can kind of think of them as a two-part masterclass in getting through incredible challenges. Al-Anfal, that one deals with what happens after a battle, the importance of sticking to treaties, and that sting of betrayal. But then At-Tawbah, it goes even deeper. It really exposes the dangers from within, hypocrisy, and it walks us through some of the most difficult tests of faith the early Muslims ever had to face.
So how did all these lessons actually play out in real life? Well, we're about to take a little journey through those key moments that didn't just test the early community, but actually forged its very identity.
And it all kicks off at a moment of just absolute vulnerability. I'm talking about the Hijra, the migration from Mecca. Picture this. The Prophet Muhammad and his closest friend Abu Bakr are hiding out in the cave of Thor. Their enemies are literally right outside. And it's right there, in that moment of pure desperation, that the surah reminds us of the divine protection that comes with unshakable faith. This wasn't just a physical journey. It was the first huge test of trust.
You know, what's really fascinating is how these battles show that the threats were coming from all directions. The Battle of Badr, for instance, wasn't just a fight against an enemy army. No, it also exposed the enemy within, the hypocrites plotting behind the scenes and allies who betrayed their promises. Then fast forward to the Battle of Hunayn. This is right after the huge victory of conquering Mecca, and confidence, well, it tipped right over into arrogance. The Muslims were so proud of how big their army was that they were nearly defeated. And that's the key lesson, right? It was this powerful, humbling reminder that real victory comes from God, not just from your own strength or numbers.
But those lessons in humility and faith, they were about to be pushed to the absolute breaking point. This brings us to an expedition that was so incredibly tough, it actually earned a special name, the Expedition of Hardship.
And this leads us to a really central question that Surah At-Tawbah digs into. What was it? What was the ultimate test of faith for this brand new community? What was that one single event that finally drew a line in the sand, separating those who were truly committed from those who were just, faking it?
The answer is the Tabuk expedition. And the way it's described in the narrative is with this incredibly powerful phrase, one of the most difficult expeditions of life. Yeah, this was not just another campaign. This was a defining moment of unbelievable struggle.
And to really get why it was so difficult, just try to imagine marching through the blistering desert heat while facing a terrible famine with almost no supplies. These extreme conditions, they acted like a pressure cooker. They completely stripped away any pretense and fully exposed the hypocrites who were busy making up excuses to stay behind. It was this moment of truth, a filter that revealed who had real conviction and made it crystal clear who was truly part of the community.
So, okay, these are amazing historical stories, but the Quran presents them for a reason that goes way beyond just that time period. What can we, today, take away from these intense trials?
Let's just break down the core principles that were literally forged in the fire of these events. First up, from that cave, from the Hijra, we learn that faith is at its most powerful when things are at their worst. Second, Badr and Tabuk show us that sometimes the biggest threat to a group comes from the inside, from disunity and people not being sincere. Third, Hunayn teaches us about the essential strength that comes from humility, that depending on a higher power is way more important than any material advantage you think you have. And finally, this constant theme of keeping your promises, it points to a deep sense of accountability. Integrity and keeping your word are just foundational.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to mull over. These aren't just dusty old stories from the past. They're basically blueprints for the kinds of challenges we all face in one way or another. Tests of our own beliefs, our loyalty to the people around us, and our ability to stay humble when we succeed. So the real question for us is, how can these ancient lessons on faith and perseverance actually shape the way we navigate our own complex modern world today?